Joan Crawford. In 1978, Christina Crawford sent shockwaves through Hollywood with her memoir Mommy Dearest, accusing her adoptive mother, Joan Crawford, one of the golden age's brightest stars, of years of physical and emotional mistreatment. The book generated widespread controversy, challenging the public's long-held image of Joan as the ultimate symbol of glamour and grit, especially after her Academy Award win for Mildred Pierce in 1946. Christina's account painted a grim picture: brutal punishments for minor offenses, relentless demands for perfection, and the infamous no wire hangers incident, an anecdote immortalized in the later film adaptation. However, no independent evidence outside Christina's and her brother Christopher's testimonies has ever verified these claims. Joan's twin daughters, Kathy and Cynthia, fiercely defended their mother, calling the accusations unfounded and unfair. Whispers emerged that Joan's obsession with maintaining a flawless public image might have masked deeper personal struggles, though certain authors, like Charlotte Chandler in her 2008 book Not the Girl Next Door, have questioned the accuracy of Christina's memories. Joan Crawford, who passed away from a heart attack on May 10, 1977, never had the chance to defend herself. In the aftermath, her legacy became a battleground between adoration and condemnation. Mommy Dearest soared to bestseller status and later exploded into pop culture with the 1981 film starring Faye Dunaway. Whether seen as a daughter's painful reckoning or a controversial betrayal, Christina's revelations ensured that Joan's Hollywood fairy tale would forever carry a darker, more complicated shadow. Marlon Brando. By the time Marlon Brando died on July 1st, 2004, the once revolutionary powerhouse of mid-century Hollywood had retreated into isolation, worn down by betrayals within his own family. Brando, whose fame exploded in the 1950s with performances in A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront, never fully escaped the chaos behind closed doors. The most public rupture came in 1990 when Brando's eldest son, Christian, pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter after the death of Doug Drollett, the boyfriend of Marlon's daughter Cheyenne. Christian claimed he acted to protect Cheyenne from alleged abuse, but prosecutors painted a picture of reckless violence. Marlon's tearful courtroom testimony made headlines, with some media outlets speculating it blurred the line between genuine grief and theatrical display, though no consensus was ever reached. Long before the trial, fractures in the Brando household ran deep. Christian later described his father as emotionally unavailable, a man shaped by his own troubled upbringing under an abusive father, Eugene Brando. Biographers suggest that Marlon, despite his brilliance on screen, struggled to break the cycle of trauma at home. After Marlon's death, the battles shifted from emotional to financial. His estate was reported as approximately $21.6 million, though estimates vary depending on debts and asset valuations. Legal disputes erupted among his heirs, with some alleging mismanagement by the executors. Allegations circulated that tensions between Brando and his children influenced the uneven distribution of his wealth, but no court ever confirmed such claims. Escalating the tragedy, Cheyenne's self-inflicted death in 1995 devastated Marlon, sending him deeper into seclusion. In the 2015 documentary Listen to Me, Marlon, compiled from his personal recordings, Brando reflects on his regrets with painful honesty, admitting, "I tried, I failed." For a man who once reshaped American acting with raw authenticity, the betrayals and tragedies within his own family left wounds no standing ovation could ever heal. Judy Garland. Judy Garland, born Frances Ethel Gumm, was barely 3 years old when she first took the stage under her mother's strict supervision. By 13, she had signed with MGM in September of 1935, launching a career that would define the golden age of Hollywood. Yet behind the dazzling spotlight, darker forces loomed. Multiple biographers, including Gerald Clark in Get Happy, The Life of Judy Garland, report that Ethel Gumm, allegedly following studio pressures, administered amphetamines to boost Garland's stamina and barbiturates to force rest. Though several researchers caution that definitive proof of Ethel's personal role remains scarce. Garland herself reportedly referred to her mother as the real Wicked Witch of the West, a biting remark echoed in private conversations, but lacking a verifiable primary source. Financially, Garland's situation was equally precarious. Despite starring in classics like The Wizard of Oz in 1939, her earnings were poorly shielded. California's Coogan law, intended to protect child actors' income, offered little real-world enforcement at the time, leaving Garland vulnerable. After her untimely passing from a substance-related incident in June of 1969, legal disputes over her modest estate unfolded, though the acrimony of these proceedings is sometimes overstated in popular retellings. Various experts maintain Ethel's choices reflected the harsh expectations of early Hollywood. But for Garland, the wounds were personal, and they never fully healed. Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe. By January 14, 1954, when Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe exchanged vows in a modest civil ceremony at San Francisco City Hall, the world saw a golden couple. But behind the glamour, tension simmered. Biographer Donald Spoto notes that Monroe's strained relationship with her mother and some extended family members often left her vulnerable to financial exploitation, although direct claims against her half-sister Bernice Miracle remain unsubstantiated. Meanwhile, DiMaggio's traditional values clashed sharply with Monroe's Hollywood lifestyle. Historian Barbara Leeming suggests that DiMaggio viewed Monroe's pursuit of fame as a betrayal of the simple, private life he longed for. Speculation abounds that he resented the influence of those around her, believing they fueled her relentless career drive at the cost of her well-being. Their marriage unraveled quickly, ending in divorce on October 27, 1954, after just 274 days, citing mental cruelty, a vague but telling accusation at the time. After Monroe's heartbreaking demise on August 5, 1962, ruled a probable self-inflicted death by the Los Angeles County coroner, DiMaggio orchestrated a private funeral, deliberately excluding most Hollywood figures. While no direct evidence confirms he blamed Monroe's family for her downfall, some biographers speculate that he harbored deep resentment toward the industry and those he felt had failed her. Monroe's estate became another battlefield, though Bernice Miracle was not a major player in the legal disputes. Instead, battles over her assets exposed the persistent greed that had shadowed Monroe's life, leaving a bitter legacy behind the silver screen smiles. Bing Crosby. By the late 1940s, Bing Crosby stood as one of America's most beloved entertainers, with White Christmas topping charts and an Academy Award for Going My Way in 1944. Yet behind the polished image, a family rift was brewing that would later shock the public. In 1983, Gary Crosby, Bing's eldest son with actress Dixie Lee, published Going My Own Way, a memoir alleging that Bing was emotionally distant and physically harsh. Gary described their home as a place of strict discipline, painting his father as a stern, sometimes frightening figure. His brothers, Philip, Dennis, and Lindsay, echoed similar sentiments in interviews, though Philip notably told People magazine that while their upbringing was tough, it was meant to prepare them for life's hardships. Some accounts even suggest that Bing's methods, though severe, were typical of parenting styles in that era. However, not everyone accepted Gary's portrayal. Bing's second wife, Katharine Grant, and several family friends publicly defended him, questioning whether Gary's struggles with alcoholism and resentment had distorted his memories. Biographer Gary Giddens in Bing Crosby, A Pocketful of Dreams, acknowledged Bing's sternness but argued that depictions of him as a sadistic monster were exaggerated. Legends tease that the Crosby family feud was fueled as much by personal demons as by genuine grievances. True or not, the allegations cast a long shadow, complicating Bing Crosby's once untouchable legacy and offering a stark reminder that even Golden Age icons were not immune from betrayal within their own homes. Buster Keaton. By the tender age of 3, Buster Keaton was already a fixture in his parents' vaudeville act, earning the nickname the Human Mop, as Joe and Myra Keaton hurled him across stages to roaring crowds. According to Keaton's 1960 autobiography, My Wonderful World of Slapstick, the rough treatment was not just for laughs. Behind the curtains, Joe Keaton's drinking and explosive temper cast a darker shadow over their family life. Although some accounts, like Marion Mead's Buster Keaton Cut to the Chase, describe Joe as an alcoholic whose discipline sometimes veered into cruelty, direct quotes vary across sources. Financial control became another form of dominance. Despite Buster's meteoric rise in the silent film era, earning salaries that, adjusted for inflation, would equate to millions today, his parents reportedly managed his income with a heavy hand. Specific figures remain elusive, but Keaton himself hinted at financial restrictions that prioritized family needs over his own stability. Breaking into film independently in 1917 seemed like a new beginning, yet gossip persists that betrayal was never far behind. His marriage to Natalie Talmadge in 1921, part of the influential Talmadge acting dynasty, quickly soured. Official divorce records from 1933 cite cruelty as grounds, though biographers like Edward McPherson suggest that Keaton's growing battles with alcoholism, possibly rooted in his chaotic upbringing, played a major role. As part of the settlement, Natalie reportedly gained full custody of their sons, Joseph and Robert. While some sources claim Keaton was barred from seeing them, others suggest the separation was more informal but equally devastating. By the early 1930s, Keaton had lost his fortune, his family, and much of his creative freedom. Signing with MGM in 1928 had stripped him of the independent control that once defined his genius. Gossip persists that without the early exploitation by his father and the emotional isolation enforced by his ex-wife, Keaton's later struggles with alcoholism and depression might have been less severe. What remains undisputed is that the man once celebrated as the Great Stoneface spent decades wrestling with personal demons planted, in part, by those who should have protected him. Montgomery Clift. By the mid-1950s, Montgomery Clift was one of Hollywood's brightest stars, celebrated for performances in A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. But behind the camera flashes, his personal life carried a quieter tragedy. Raised under the ambitious gaze of his mother, Ethel Sonny Clift, Montgomery grew up in a household where success was not just encouraged, it was expected. Biographer Patricia Bosworth suggests that Sonny's aspirations for her son created emotional pressures that lingered into his adulthood, though direct evidence of manipulation remains debated. On May 12, 1956, Clift's world changed forever after a devastating car crash outside Elizabeth Taylor's Beverly Hills home. The accident left him with a broken nose, a shattered jaw, and permanent facial scarring, injuries that in image-obsessed mid-century Hollywood could spell career doom. While friends like Taylor rushed to his side, family support appeared complicated. A few biographers, including Robert LaGuardia, hint that certain relatives distanced themselves in the aftermath, possibly out of fear that public association with Clift's struggles could tarnish the family's reputation. However, hard proof of deliberate abandonment remains elusive. Deepening the sorrow, speculation abounds that Clift's family discouraged him from seeking psychiatric help, worried that therapy or treatment for addiction might expose personal vulnerabilities to a ruthless press corps. Whether this was a protective instinct or another layer of pressure is left to interpretation. As the 60s wore on, Clift battled chronic pain, substance dependency, and depression largely with the help of a few loyal friends rather than family. When he passed away from a heart-related event on July 23, 1966, at just 45 years old, some sources suggest he had grown distant from much of his family, though the full extent of estrangement remains a topic of debate among historians. Montgomery Clift's story stands as a somber reminder that, even at the pinnacle of stardom, betrayal can come from the places least expected. Jean Tierney. At the peak of her fame in the 1940s, Jean Tierney dazzled audiences with roles in films like Laura and Leave Her to Heaven. Yet behind the Hollywood glow, a painful betrayal brewed. Tierney's parents, Howard and Belle Tierney, reportedly downplayed her early mental health struggles, prioritizing the family's social image over her well-being. In her autobiography, Self-Portrait, Tierney reflected on how emotional warning signs were brushed aside, setting the stage for deeper fractures. Financial control added another layer. Her father managed her earnings, but, according to Tierney's own accounts, poor investments left her vulnerable, especially during her psychiatric hospitalizations in the early 1950s. While concrete proof of deliberate financial misconduct remains elusive, speculation lingers among Hollywood historians. The most haunting blow came during Tierney's mental health crisis. After giving birth to her daughter Daria, who was born with severe disabilities due to Tierney contracting rubella during pregnancy, her emotional health deteriorated. She was hospitalized multiple times, undergoing treatments like electroshock therapy at institutions such as the Institute of Living and the Menninger Clinic. Accounts suggest that both her parents and her then-husband, fashion designer Oleg Cassini, were involved in decisions about her psychiatric care. Some biographers hint, though without concrete proof, that family fears over public scandal may have influenced these choices more than Tierney's actual needs. Talk circulated that her sister, Pat, also had a role in endorsing the institutionalizations, though definitive evidence is lacking. Despite her struggles, Tierney remained a beloved figure on screen. Yet her personal story casts a long shadow over the glitz of the Golden Age. exposing how even Hollywood royalty could be wounded by those closest to them when image mattered more than compassion. Orson Welles. In 1941, Orson Welles rocked Hollywood with Citizen Kane, a film so revolutionary that it forever changed American cinema. But behind the brilliance lurked a grim finale few saw coming. Betrayal not from studios or critics, but from within his own family. Welles died on October 10, 1985, at 70 years old. What followed was a tangled legal battle over his unfinished works, particularly his long-troubled project, The Other Side of the Wind. At the center of the dispute stood his daughter, Beatrice Welles. Despite her relationship a few historians describe as distant during his later years, Beatrice quickly moved to assert control over her father's estate. According to reports from outlets like the New York Times, she launched a series of legal actions to claim rights over his incomplete projects. Welles had spent the last 15 years of his life struggling to complete The Other Side of the Wind, battling financial woes and endless legal snags. Throughout the 70s, Welles often voiced a deep mistrust of those around him, once famously warning, "The vultures circle before you're even dead," a quote widely attributed to him, though its exact origin remains murky. After his death, contentious battles between Beatrice, Welles's longtime companion Oha Kadar, and various financiers stalled the film's release for decades. Some critics argued that Beatrice's aggressive legal tactics prioritized financial interests over Welles's artistic vision. Others defended her actions as necessary to protect his legacy. Regardless, the film languished in limbo until 2018, when Netflix and a team of Welles scholars finally pieced it together. Film historians often view the saga as a tragic postscript to Welles's tumultuous career. As some commentators have mused, had Welles been allowed to finish The Other Side of the Wind on his own terms, it might have sealed his standing as the ultimate maverick of American cinema. Instead, it stands as a haunting reminder of how even the greatest talents can find their legacies trapped by those closest to them. James Stewart. James Stewart, the embodiment of mid-century American decency, faced a private heartbreak that few fans ever suspected. When he married Gloria Haytrick McLean in 1949, Stewart became stepfather to her two sons, Ronald and Michael. Though he embraced them as his own, tensions reportedly simmered beneath the surface. Ronald, in particular, struggled through adulthood, facing substance-related issues and brushes with the law, according to several biographers. While no formal adoption ever took place, Stewart treated Ronald like family, making the eventual rift all the more painful. Whispers abound that Ronald attempted to exploit Stewart financially during the 1970s, though no legal actions or confirmed reports ever surfaced. Some dare to guess that Stewart's famously stoic demeanor concealed deep wounds caused by this betrayal. Biographer Mark Elliott suggested that Stewart carried personal disappointments quietly, a trait that only deepened the tragedy of his fractured relationship with Ronald. For a man celebrated as America's ideal father figure, Stewart's real-life family struggles painted a far more somber picture, one marked by loyalty, silence, and heartbreak. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.